schools in Victoria, the schools that we set up in the 50s and 60s, the programs that we set up in the 50s and 60s are just having to change. They're having to change in the 80s and the 90s because the circumstances affecting the lives of young people have changed quite radically. It's partly the economy, it's partly changing values, it's partly technology and capital and all of those developments.
Well, to meet the challenges of the future, we must have school structures which allocate the available resources in a fair and sensible manner. Even more important is the educational argument for curriculum choice and quality. And the new Victorian Certificate of Education will establish a broad and diverse quality curriculum at the senior levels in our secondary schools. And the restructuring of schools is aimed at providing a viable and vigorous unified secondary education system, one in which the public can have continued confidence.
The Blackburn report requires schools to increase their range of curriculum offerings, both to encourage young people to stay at school longer and in order to improve the quality of education. These requirements will be reflected in the VCE. Also, there will be a need for greater depth of study so that students can, within a broadly based education, undertake specialised subjects.
The pressure on schools to make change is a pressure coming from young people themselves. They're becoming more mature sooner than used to be the case, and we can't really go on treating a 17 and 18-year-old as though he or she was still 11 or 12. So that schools who have developed a more adult atmosphere, who are looking for the young adult in these teenagers, are schools that are attracting young people. They are schools that are providing not just the course and the curriculum, but an atmosphere appropriate to the maturing and responsible years of these young adults.
The motivation for the change really came from a feeling that the use of facilities in Bendigo was not very effective to provide classes for years 11 and 12. So I suppose you could call it a rationalisation of resources for the students in years 11 and 12. That was the initial motivation. With the beginning of the 80s, conditions have changed so much, have changed so dramatically within the community, and the need for secondary education in years 11 and 12 to reach a much wider range of the students than previously. Because of that, this school has had to look at its aims and its curriculum and to chart a quite significant change in direction. We had to meet the needs of students who would want to complete their secondary education, but who would not necessarily be wanting to go on to tertiary education. So we had to meet a much wider range of student needs, and the curriculum has been broadened as a consequence. Not only, that doesn't mean just in terms of more subjects, but different styles of completing Year 12 are now available. STC with student negotiated curriculum and a complete absence of external examination.
Well, I came from a small school, a lot smaller than Bendigo, and I moved here roughly 8 weeks ago and a couple of months ago now. I found it a lot different because here, like, there's no uniform and it's a lot more freedom, and you don't feel as much pressure on you to work, and it's all up to you whether you do or you don't. So if you don't, no one's going to say, well, you know, get stuck into it. It really is up to you. But then again, I think you're treated more as equals as the teachers, and you just feel a little bit more respected and perhaps act a little bit more responsibly, and I think that's helped me a lot growing up, I guess.
I think the measure of whether we have achieved our aims or not is a little difficult to establish, but figures of enrolments, I think, do tell something significant in relation to this story. The enrolment of the school was stable at around about 650 for a number of years, but with the adjustments to our curriculum and an attempt to broaden the range of needs that we were meeting, we've experienced a very rapid growth in enrolments from 650 odd in 1983 to over 1,000 students in the current year.
Let's take a 14-year-old boy in 1948. He will have his merit certificate. That was year 8. He can turn now to the Postmaster General's department, take his red bike and become the telegram boy, and join the economy, join the workforce, do so much learning and skill gaining right there in that work situation. Or it might have been a proficiency certificate at year 9 and someone entering the building trade, taking his hammer and saw and going off to join the workforce. Or an intermediate certificate, entering a bank, a cadetship, a studentship. In all kinds of ways, young people were welcomed into the workforce during the 40s and 50s in ways that we no longer see happening in the current economic climate.
Behind the VCE is the commitment of both the federal and the state governments to increasing the proportion of young people that stay on to the end of year 12, and doing this not by raising the compulsory school leaving age, but by making the post-compulsory years more attractive to students. And that's a big challenge, a really big challenge for us, and means that we've got to start again and develop new curriculum and new assessment and certification procedures.
The Blackburn Report has been our best means in Victoria of working through the problems at years 11 and 12, so that we can, with the new VCE, provide a broader, more balanced, more practical as well as thoroughly theoretical kind of course. And young people who were once at 12 years of age sent off either to the high school because they were good with their heads, allegedly, off to the tech school because you're good with your hands, young fella, are now in fact going to come into a kind of secondary schooling which brings both of these worlds together, but brings the theoretical and the practical together. And we can see that in the formation of some of our new senior colleges.
The key factors that motivated us for developing the Ashwood College, I think, were two major reasons. One was the declining numbers. The ministry were giving out figures which were suggesting fairly dramatic declining numbers, and clearly that made staff a little bit anxious and made staff concerned to see what we could do about countering that. And we are in an area where almost half of the students go on to private schools, and we felt therefore that it was time that the state system really did compete and show the community what we have to offer instead of just sitting back and allowing the students to go there. But I think that probably even more important than that really was our concern to see that we broadened the curriculum to cater for more students. There was a tendency for students to be leaving school at the end of year 10, and there were possibilities in the community for them to go to jobs or to go to special TAFE college courses. But we felt that it was our responsibility to provide for them within the school.
We had no set ideas as to what might develop, whether we'd become 11 to 12 campus and the other school a 7 to 10, or what would really happen. We felt that both schools had facilities and years of experience in curriculum that ought to marry together. And during the discussions, somehow we felt that the primary school, being so close, ought to be in those discussions as well. And it didn't take us long to realise, 3 schools, that we had something going for us that was quite unique. 3 schools adjacent to each other. So we very quickly involved our school councils in this process, who supported the initiatives we'd taken. And no time since then have we kept anybody not informed as to what was going on. Parents have been kept informed, student bodies and so on, with the support of the councils.
We were very concerned about the transition of students moving from grade 6 at a primary into a secondary at year 7. And we're very concerned about the different styles of organisation of the curriculum in those schools. And I've heard it said in the past that at primary schools they tend to teach students, and at secondary schools they tend to teach subjects. And that concerned us, and we felt that here we had an ideal opportunity to make sure that the students coming from grade 6 move into a curriculum which follows on from, instead of being a brand new branch of or a section of their education.
Be a good advantage for the college in the future, because there'll be a lot more students over at each schools, and you'll have a lot more friends and be mixing with more students, and you'll be learning the tech trades, and the tech students will be doing the subjects that we do and things like that. And also for the sports, because the boys can go over for football, and I'm in the netball team, and so we'll have more choice of girls going out for the netball team and maybe better players getting into the team.
My oldest daughter, Samantha, completed her HSC at the end of last year, and she was in the first group that benefited from the sharing of facilities between Jordanville Technical School and Ashwood High School. She had a choice of 26 subjects in Year 12 from which to choose, and this was good because at the end of Year 11 she wasn't completely sure just what area she wanted to pursue at tertiary level. And by having a range of subjects from which to choose, she was able to select the course that suited her. Penelope is in Year 12 this year, and she's with the second group that has the benefit of this broad range of subjects.
Well, I'm doing sort of like a more academic range, like biology and that sort of thing. But I think that if I was in Kathy's case, she's in Year 10, I think that I might have chosen the more creative subjects like catering and art and that sort of thing. But when I was in Year 10, Ashwood College wasn't even thought of then, and so I didn't really have that opportunity. But I think now if I was in Year 10, I might have done more creative things.
Yeah, I think by the time I reach Year 12, there'll be a whole range of different subjects available, which will be a great opportunity, I think, for when I leave school, or whatever I'm interested in doing when I leave school, as in jobs or things like that.
I think really the most important part when bringing together a college concept of this nature is to look at the curriculum, as we've discussed, first, followed by the building stock and grounds for the new college. You can't plan a curriculum unless you can teach it somewhere, and you can't know what to build unless you've got a curriculum. So our architect is closely working with the curriculum committee, waiting for decisions on school structures, etc., before making final recommendations regarding building stock.
Within the VCE, we are developing new studies. But it's not just a question of having lots of studies for students to take. It's much more a question of what program students will take. In other words, we're concerned with the whole program that a student takes, and making sure that they are coherent and that they're worthwhile and that they lead on to something, that is to work, further training or further study.
At the turn of the century, about 70% of the total workforce in the country, I mean the whole of the nation, was working in primary production. 70%. Today, because of technology and capital, because of new equipment and larger holdings, we need fewer than 4% of the total workforce to work the land. In fact, many of those 4% are facing the repossession of their tractors and their combine harvesters right now.
I'm a farmer in the Oyen area. I live 8 mile, 12 kilometres out of Oyen. I went to Oyen High School in my youth, and I have had 2 children go through the high school at the moment, up to now, with another 3 either going through or to come through. Our first child chose to do a farm apprenticeship course with us because subjects were not able to be taught at the school here, but probably would have interested him most. He has had to choose now to leave the farm because of the financial situation of the farm. We can no longer afford to keep him on because of the climatic and the financial position of the country at the moment.
at the moment there's very limited job opportunities, and as my brother has currently come out of year 12 or year 11 and he's looking for work and there's just nothing around. So I hope to finish year 12 and go off to college to get a better chance of receiving a job.
We decided to set up a cluster group because the schools had very similar needs, and basically we had the challenge of responding to government policies of increased retention rates and providing a more comprehensive curriculum for year 11 and 12 students. The ministry recognised that the schools in this area were special in that we were classified as compensatory. The models put up by various things like the Blackburn report weren't suitable. The schools could not be amalgamated. And so we really had to think of clustering. It was the only viable plan where we felt we could get the resources, the increased resources necessary to meet those two stated government objectives. The cluster is unique in the sense that the schools from extremity to extremity are over 200 kilometres apart. I mean, Oyon's in the geographical centre, and we're probably 70 kilometres is the nearest school to us, and Murrayville and Robinvale are over 100 kilometres away from us.
Small country schools like Sea Lake can't hope to meet the requirements of the VCE if they do it in isolation. We have a limited range of teachers, and therefore there's a certain limit on the subjects we're even capable of teaching. The actual establishment itself prevents us from having a broad range of subjects at the senior level if we tried to do it by ourselves. So we really had to look at the options, and the options quite clearly for schools, as is also true for other institutions in our small communities, that you must share. You must get together with other people and do things in a cooperative fashion. In that way you have access to more people, you have access to more skill and managerial assistance, and you certainly have access to more funds and resources.
A telematics classroom is where we link up several schools through using computers, and a teacher in one school would teach students in their own school as well as students in other schools. Up to 5 schools can be linked up that way quite easily. We'd expect the telematics to allow us to more efficiently use our staff in small classes, and by effectively replacing several teachers who are running the same small class in several schools, that would allow us to use those staff to offer a greater range of subjects right across the curriculum. This is an electronics tech pack. It was developed for us by North Central Tech in Charlton. It consists of a complete curriculum package to teach electronics at Year 11 and 12.
We're really talking about mobile equipment that can be shared between schools on a rotational basis. I just mentioned some of the curriculum areas that are under development for teaching in Year 11 next year. We see things like fitting and turning, electrical, electronics, media studies, automotive. Now, they're fairly traditional areas for technical schools in the past, but they're fairly new to most high schools.
I think one of the good things about the Mallee cluster is the way it's been able to broaden the curriculum and broaden the opportunities for kids to be able to get a better education and still live in the Mallee without being disadvantaged.
Well, many of these models, such as the Kernai College model and the Mallee Schools cluster, will change the emphasis of schooling from that of neighbourhood secondary schools towards the development of district colleges, which will better cater for the needs of young adults in an area or in a district. For example, the Ministry looks forward to the development of a number of Year 11 to 12 campuses and the resultant young adult environment, which should attract more students, thereby increasing the range of options and improving retention rates.
Let's move from the wheat country down to an industrial area like the Latrobe Valley. With capital and technology and brilliant management, a huge institution like the SEC there isn't a place there as there used to be for the numbers of young people. And that's true across the whole apprenticeship scene. Young people are not being welcomed into the workplace in the way that they used to be, but they are returning in great numbers to school, staying there longer, looking for new kinds of courses. That's the pressure in the 80s and 90s on curriculum and on school organisation, and why we have to broaden and balance our programs in different and new and important ways.
I think Kernigh College will be a lot better for me and for everybody else because it'll offer a wider range of subjects, so I'll get to choose more what I'd like to do. The junior schools and the senior schools will have more of individual classes, like the junior school will have more year 9s and 10s, and the senior school will have more year 11 and 12 students, so they can concentrate more on what that year level would like to learn, more so than the whole school system.
Kernigh College consists of 4 separate campuses within the one college structure. Within the town of Morwell, we have what was Morwell High School. About a kilometre distant is what was Morwell Technical School, and across in this direction a further 2 kilometres is what was Maryvale High School. It will be known as the Maryvale campus, and it will accommodate years 11 and 12 students in the future. And the Morwell Heights campus will take years 7 to 10. The Morwell campus will take years 7 to 10. And 11 kilometres distant to the south, Churchill campus will be another middle school, a 7 to 10 school.
The Churchill community relates to Morwell as part of one community in many ways because of the satellite nature of the town, but as well as that, quite distinctly the town has its own identity and is very proud of that. The school, since its arrival, has formed a major and important part of that social fabric. There's one clear way in which the reorganisation will advantage this community, and that is by its young people having access to the VCE through the Maryvale campus of the college, rather than trying to manage it here in a much smaller arrangement. The big advantage will be what they get in terms of curriculum and resourcing of that curriculum in facilities terms and human terms. There will be 500 plus students there, of which ours will make up a fair proportion of those once they move on, and they will get a tremendous advantage in terms of their career options and life options by what is offered at that campus. So we're very excited about that, and so is the whole community.
Well, I think Kernigh College will be far better than an ordinary type school, 7 to 12, not only because of the fact that you'll get a wider range of courses, but you'll get a better quality in the ways of things, of how they're taught, in the ways of the resources available, because all 4 schools in our case, all the resources are pooled together, and in the case of the senior school, there are teachers, all of them are senior teachers, and it's not as if the teachers are spread from, not only from senior, but to cover the junior levels as well, so you've got a better specialisation.
The college was established in January 1987, incorporated with one council of its own. Each of the 4 campuses has its own college principal. For example, there's a college principal at Morwell, a college principal at Churchill, etc. And in keeping with the effort or the intention of the college to establish a corporate management structure, the individual college principals will probably undertake portfolios in specific areas.
For example, I'd like to think that we had a principal with responsibility for teacher welfare, student welfare and staff professional development, another taking the role of facilities management, another curriculum. A further principal would be in charge of finance.
I think Kernigh is going to be a great thing once it settles down and really gets itself off the ground. But at the moment, as a parent with my children right in the thick of it, I do have quite a few concerns. I can see a lot of pitfalls, and talking with teachers, I know they can see pitfalls too, and they're doing their very best to try and meet those before they happen. But it all depends on individuals and how they handle the situation, I think.
I've been in my position only a short time, but I've been aware of the difficulties that the college inevitably will face. One of them is establishing a total college identity within the community of Morwell Churchill. Another one is to take on board, I suppose, the very best of the pre-existing schools and mould them in those features into a corporate identity that the community will come to recognise as Kernai College, a valued local educational institution in its own right.
Across Australia, we see new kinds of courses developing to meet the young adult status of students and to meet their needs. In all states, not just here in Victoria, we're seeing the kinds of programs that call for more negotiating skills, more problem-solving skills, more cooperative effort, all of those things that are going to stand by them in the wider world at this time of change.
All of these plan changes seek to bring to reality a most important part of government education policy, that as many students as possible participate in the full span of education, the full 6 years of secondary education, and complete in a satisfactory fashion that education. The achievement of such a goal is of vital importance, not only to benefit our young people, but for the future prosperity of Australia as a whole.
This is the last night that the Morwell campus of Kernai College has a debutante ball. Kernai College tonight sees the Morwell campus present 32 of its young debutantes. This is a historic occasion, one that has an element of sadness in it, but yet when we look forward and when we see that it's the last of the Morwell campus, but perhaps the first of the Kernai College ones.